Now, Washington Mornings on the Mall. 105.9 FM. And AM 630. WMAL.
637 on WMAL. Brian Eaman, Brian Wilson. Trevor Maddich will be here about an hour from now. We'll talk about the Redskins game on Saturday, the improvement or perhaps the regression of one Robert Griffin III, Bobby G, as I like to call him now, the quarterback of the Washington Redskins. We'll do that 1 hour from now. And coming up in just a few minutes, we'll talk about a new place where advertising is taking place, and it's actually a pretty simple idea. I'm surprised it actually hasn't happened before. We'll get into that coming up. But Eli Lake is on the line. He's the national security correspondent for the Daily Beast and for Newsweek. Good morning, Eli.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you on as always. I want to start off with a trip to Afghanistan where Martin Dempsey, General Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, is over there talking to the Afghans about basically U.S. soldiers getting killed by Afghans who are in uniform or in some kind of association with the Afghan security team. What is going on there, and is there any way to stop this from happening?
Well, the military calls this the insider threat, and it's been a particular problem in Afghanistan, and it's a problem that's been getting worse. And that is, I think, in part driven by a couple things. One is that the Afghans know that the United States is leaving, so there is a certain element, I think, that's not going to be as invested in relationships with the U.S. officers as because they think that eventually they're going to be gone and they have to make their peace with the Taliban.
Right.
I think the other issue is that what we're seeing is that the 8-step vetting process that military officials have said is just not good enough at this point. And that you're going to have to sort of accept the fact that we're seeing in a way, with Iraq, although I wouldn't say it's the same with the military, that when the United States leaves Afghanistan, it's not necessarily clear it's going to be 100% in the ally column. And, we're seeing, over the weekend there was a breaking story, that Iraq was, helping Iran, America's regional enemy at this point, skirt sanctions, international sanctions on the Iranian central bank and on their petroleum and so forth. And so it's another example of how you spend a lot of time in nation-building capacity in a place like Afghanistan, and you're still going to have elements within their military that are going to target U.S. soldiers, which is a disgrace.
How do you solve that problem, though, other than do a more thorough vetting of the candidates?
Or stick around longer, which doesn't seem like we're going to do.
I think it's going to I think absent a kind of radical political problem, I don't know a lot about the specifics of how the vetting works. You hope you can do a better job vetting, and you hope you can have better kind of situational awareness with these troops, but it's a huge issue. All
right, well, you talked about Iraq maybe helping out Iran, skirt some sanctions. The Egyptian president, the new Egyptian president, Mohamed Morsy, is apparently visiting Iran. What exactly is he going there for, and how concerned is the United States about this trip?
Well, keep in mind that the Egyptian-Iranian relationship has been somewhat warming since Hosni Mubarak left the scene. There were talks of visits like this about a year ago. And the other thing I would just say is that there is an interesting kind of relationship between the Muslim Brotherhood and the Iranians. The Iranians, have, I think, streets or buildings named after the people who murdered Anwar Sadat. In Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood, had a tremendous amount of scrutiny, and a lot of their members were arrested after that assassination. And what they would tell you is that, radicals who followed Saeed Qutb, who broke with the Muslim Brotherhood in the late 1960s, like Ayman al-Zawahiri, killed Anwar Sadat. We in the Muslim Brotherhood are not endorsing that sort of thing. And Iran was always the kind of radical state with Egypt for many, decades that, sort of supported the most radical Islamists. So to see the president of Egypt visiting Iran is a really, really big deal in that context, because the Iranians have in the past openly supported people who wanted an Islamic revolution in Egypt. On the other hand, keep in mind, Morsy's just had a series of meetings with top U.S. officials. There is zero chance in the time being that the peace deal with Israel, or for that matter, the $2 billion in annual military aid, are going to come to an end. So I don't know substantively what is going to happen in this visit that's going to mean that Egypt is somehow no longer in the ally column with the United States. But symbolically, it's very important, and it could mean something substantively down the road.
Speaking of Iran, the rhetoric coming out of Iran these days toward Israel and the rhetoric in Israel toward Iran seems to be sort of superheating. What do you see on that front?
Well, I don't like to get in this. I think it's a perilous game for journalists to get into the prediction that Israel's going to finally strike Iran. But that said, I've noticed that there have been concrete steps happening in Israel that look to me like the Israeli leaders are preparing their population, at least, for the inevitability that there will be an airstrike. One, you're seeing the Israelis handing out gas masks. Two, the Israelis just put back on will now start using again one of their most important drones known as the Aton, which is a large UAV that can stay in the air for 36 hours and has a lot of electronic warfare platforms on it. And finally, the Israelis have moved their missile defense battery known as the Iron Dome to the north, where it's been relatively quiet, but maybe in anticipation of Hezbollah missile attacks that they saw in earnest in 2006. So those are the steps that they're taking that I think are serious. And then the leaks and the statements from the Israelis are very clear. It's not, they will not outsource what they see as an existential problem with Iran to the United States. So when Obama says, "Trust me, I don't bluff," the Israelis are saying, that's not even good enough for us.
All right, we only have about a minute left. Do you have any intel on the Russians and this sub that apparently was on the southern shores of the U.S. and not being detected? And
Senator John Cornyn's asking a lot of questions about this.
And I'm going to ask Senator John Cornyn's office about it because that's a very intriguing story, and I saw it, but I don't have anything fresh, and I don't want to go out on the radio and say something I don't know.
All right,
understand. All right, Eli.
Thank you,
Eli Lake.